the man at the helm. So I highly recommend people jump into the channel that we created, the Safety Vulcan Chat. A quick shout out to Paul Dutton for creating a very good video that really covers everything nice and succinctly. So if anybody wants to kind of get a bit of a background on it, who haven't been following, I would recommend taking a look at that video.
Cheeky shout out to Paul Dutton. I'm also going to put it into the stage questions because it's a very good video. And yeah, I mean, should we get this started? Should we wait a bit more?
We can get started. Why not? People will trickle in, I'm sure.
Yeah. Okay. Then we start with the only thing that's probably familiar to you guys. It's my usual intro. Thank you all for coming. Welcome to The Pillars. We are a community-led space aimed at supporting protocols and educating our investors through intelligent, meaningful conversation. Here we ask the tough questions you all want answered. Usually now I would introduce a protocol that is we're supposed to be talking about how they're working and what's happening, how it goes. This time it's going to be a bit different. As you can see from the title, Safuu and Bryan Legend, where did it all go wrong? So this is just going to be an open forum, a discussion to give you guys a space and have a get together to just share our thoughts, what happened, our feelings, give you also a safe space to share your thoughts, discuss them. We just want this to be like a very we don't want this to be like a bashing, like it's not, you're not going to listen to us for 1 hour or 2 hours depending on how long we go and just rip into everyone. If this is just going to be a sharing of thoughts and ideas and opinions, and yeah, I think this was a decent summary of what we're going to do.
It was. Yeah, as you said, it's not going to be a bashing session, as it were. It's not an hour's worth of name calling. I also think, from my personal point of view, my personal opinion is that this is multi-layered. It isn't just one gentleman that sat at the top and was a complete puppet master. He needed puppets in order to be able to do what he was doing. So while, of course, he shoulders, 99.98% of the blame, there were and have been people in the space, especially when it surrounds Safuu, this particular protocol, Bryan Legend, who have been willfully ignorant to what he's been doing, and deliberately so. I'm not buying people that jump on stage with 4, 5, 6 influencers in one go, all sitting there very sullen, saying, "Mr. Bryan Legend, you're the bad guy. We're no longer going to cover this project." That's a cop-out as far as I'm concerned. You've amassed a following because people trust your opinion. Now, either you did your due diligence and truly believed what he was saying was correct, in which case I have to question whether or not you're the right person to be giving anybody advice, or you didn't and you turned a blind eye at times when you shouldn't have, and you were responsible for not asking the hard questions when they should have been asked. And no amount of woe is me at this point, or standing back and saying, well, it wasn't me, don't look at me, I didn't do anything, is going to be reasonable. One of the things that we spoke about in private, and I'll say it here, is not that long ago, Mr. Bryan Legend spent upwards of $30,000 on a necklace to parade in Dubai. It was a ridiculous stunt. It was bought with people's money. It was bought with investors' money, as we well know now. And some of the people now holding their hands up and saying, "I'm not responsible," were stood next to him, grinning, telling him how wonderful it is, because they had a free pass to get to Dubai. They enjoyed the drinks. They enjoyed the lavish parties. They enjoyed the notoriety. They enjoyed what fame it was that they had in this very small space that we call DeFi. They enjoyed the uproar that would happen when they would step into the space. At that point, people were asking very reasonable, meaningful, real questions of the protocol, of its leadership, of where money was being spent, showing blockchain transactions. A lot of these people, not all of them, but a lot of these people would not just shout you down, but advocate for you to be removed from the space, or tell you you were a fudder, or say you shouldn't be asking that question, fudding your bag. And, the usual rhetoric kept coming up, right? Well, I'm never going to sell. You weren't encouraging people to take profits. You weren't encouraging people to look after their investment. Excuse me, I got something in my throat. That's better. You weren't encouraging people to look after their investment. You weren't encouraging people to do their due diligence by essentially regurgitating false information. And that is as bad as the man at the top, as far as I'm concerned, personally.
Mm-hmm. I think on that, I wanted to add something just in general. I mean, um, some people might know it already. I mean, we're always alluding kind of to the fact and kind of hinting to it. But Safuu was the reason we created this space in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
It happened because we were most of the time just all of us were investors, and we just had questions here and there of the well-being of the protocol, the visions, certain stuff that has been promoted and pushed, and stuff like, for example, also a question, the necklace that you just mentioned, just to be very anecdotal, and we felt the need, and then of course we got, I mean, I don't even know the amount of times we got timed out, kicked, banned, had to ask someone to unban us again to let us back in. Um, I mean, to be fair, sometimes we were probably pushing it, but that's of course from the perspective that if you don't get it, if we just ask something genuine and you get this backlash of, "Are you fudding? You just you're shitting your own bed," like all these this typical lingo. Um, it gets frustrating, and maybe we pushed it a bit sometimes. I believe you would also agree with that, but I think bottom line is that um, questions, a space. This wasn't really a space where you could ask tough questions, and I wouldn't even say tough questions, but just question like what is happening. And personally, um, now in hindsight, of course, it it showcased actually what kind of mentality was happening in there, and how everything got like that's what I said to you in private. Um, Something that Bryan Legend did very, very well was leverage FUD, leverage the word FUD, the mysterious this mysterious thing, where apparently if someone is asking about is a question that you would deem as hostile, that the price would dip suddenly for 10 cents, and with any other question it would dip more and dip more. And I understand sometimes if people say, yeah, it's not helping to keep asking these questions, but it is also not helping letting people in the dark, and giving the people a feeling that they are not heard, that what they're saying and what they think is not valid. And this kind of created what some people might say is some kind of cultish behavior. I don't like to use that word. I just use it for the lack of better words. But it kind of created some kind of mentality where asking questions is already something bad. And you then, of course, get negative enforcement. If you are the one asking the questions, and positive enforcement if you were the one calling it out. And my observation is we have DeFi is not just Safuu. There are so many other spaces out there, and I'm not sure which spaces were really that affected by FUD as Safuu was in a way. Whereas like it was such a dominant topic, right? I mean, there were spaces where people asked questions and all of that, but in Safuu, it was this mysterious thing that, like, this little ghost that was always flying around, like a little bit like Voldemort, right?
He created an environment of conflict. He cultivated an environment of conflict, you versus us. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, a ton of people stood on the strongest side and went for what they perceived to be the weak. And the weak were the ones that didn't buy into the ethos of the gentleman sitting at the top. And if you didn't buy into that ethos, you were going to get eaten. And
Mhm.
it was very clear that that is not how, and it's certainly clear now that that's not how a protocol in this space should be run. The community is the most important part. I mean, what amazes me, for example, at the moment is that, I'm watching chats, AMAs, just to do some research prior to this, and I'm seeing very little, bar one token, and I'm not going to mention any of the tokens because that's not what we're here for. But bar one token, I'm seeing very little by way of support for the other people that are trying to do things with some of these tokens. It's all attack, um, or holding your hands up and saying, "No, I'm not going to cover that anymore. I'm going to walk away because I want to be squeaky." Not enough people have come out and said, "You know what? I was wrong. I shouldn't have covered this. I got it wrong. Yes, I knew certain things were happening in the background. Um, I am equally, or not equally, but I am responsible to an extent for influence that I have over people. And if you call yourself an influencer or run in the space of influencing, then you have to take the rough with the smooth. And unfortunately, you're going to have to take the licks when they are due. And at this point in time, they're due. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I'll give him another shout out. I enjoyed Paul Dutton's video is because he underpinned it by saying, I got it wrong at one point, and here we are. And now I'm going to talk through all the logical steps that you should be taking when you're moving forward with another protocol. This is what you should be looking out for. You're mad if you over leverage yourself. I'm not investing in this because I don't think it's going to go anywhere. And those are reasonable conversations to have, right? And I
Mhm.
just haven't seen enough of that, both individually and collectively. And that's been particularly disappointing. And then what happens also is that you have these offshoot projects. Some are run in a way that you can see that they want to do better. You can see they want to learn. You can see they want to bring in people that are going to be able to help them, while others are run in a way that you've got to really question people's sanity if they are looking at those projects and thinking that's a really good thing to invest in. Because the people at the top, quite frankly and honestly, don't often have the foggiest idea what they're talking about. Just the basics. They
Mhm.
they stumble over the words, or they haven't done research, or they don't know their own tokenomics enough. And I am always baffled how they manage to draw people in. And the problem is, it's a lack of education in this space. It's preying on people that really don't know. So someone who knows a little bit is going to look like an absolute genius to someone who doesn't know anything at all, especially in this space because it's so technical. And I find that particularly disappointing. I'm disappointed by anybody that has put their name to this and hasn't come forward already and said, you know what, I was wrong, and I'm now going to do what I can to help all of those people that entrusted me with their money and invested because I said something positive about this. They should, I mean, all of the influencers should be standing behind Seifu even more now, really, now that he's gone, because there are still tons of people that have money in it, and that money will be lost if they don't. Anyway, to start a really hot topic, and I imagine some people are going to come at me for this one, is, what if I now flip the coin and say, well, actually, maybe Bryan Legend just failed and it all got too much, and it wasn't that he ever intended to run with the bag, um, but it just, snowballed. This negative snowball effect hit him far harder than he thought it would, and he wasn't able to kind of go against the momentum. If somebody wants to jump up on stage and call me an asshole and tell me I'm wrong, then by all means, throw your hands in
Please,
the air
please
and
do it.
jump up. Ah, there he is. Are you coming up, Austin? I saw that hand go up real quick.
Just a cheeky raise, and then
Right, while we're waiting, so let's talk through what we know so far in terms of our research. The little bits that we've looked into it. Okay. No, we're done. You can come up, come and have a conversation with us, Austin, by all means. It's not that we're done talking about this, but we now want to get people up and have an open discussion.
hello there.
How you doing,
You're,
Austin?
you're muted, but okay.
Hello?
Hello?
Can you?
Yes? I could hear you.
Oh, there you go. You can hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear
Yeah, I was just raising my hand. I wanted to make a joke, but yeah, I was just waiting to.
you.
No, I don't want to. I don't want to. I totally agree with what you were saying. I think. I mean, I said this. I hopped on. I forgot who it was. Streams. There's like 1,000 different food streamers, but so I forgot whose main one it was. But I hopped on there, and I think my biggest issue was. I mean, there's a lot of issues that's going on, but I was like super passionate about DeFi at one point, and then once I kind of seen a lot of these, quote unquote passive income projects, how it's working, like it's not passive income. It's all literally just money being turned around. It's other people's money being preyed on by their hopes and dreams that one day they're going to, pay their rent off of a crypto project and all this stuff. But it goes even deeper than that when it comes to this, because all we're seeing right now is a psychological experiment being played out. And you'll have these cult like mentality people be like, someone was even saying this in the stream yesterday. They were like, "Don't listen to Austin. He doesn't support Vulcan, so his like." These types of people are the reason why so many people struggle financially. Like, just to get at a deeper level, these types of people, when you have like this struggle for making money, and when you have people that are always struggling to make money, you're always as a person struggling, trying to find a means of like self identity. Because if you don't have money, if you don't have power, if you don't have influence, you feel like you have no identity, whether you want to admit it or not. And a lot of people in the crypto space, it's a really shiny object, especially from the previous bull market. And you have all these people wanting to come together in a group of people that also believe in crypto and stuff, and then they kind of get lost in the sauce. And then here's where the dangerous part happens: they mix friendships with money, and that is the most perfect equation for a cult like mentality, like Safuu and all these other projects like Drip and all these projects, which we're not going to get into, create these cult like mentalities, because a lot of people then start to develop friendships. They actually start to recognize different Discord usernames and all this stuff, and they're like, oh, hey, it's this guy. And they forget that at the end of the day, this is just trading. This is money in, money out. And it's a zero sum game. Every person to the left and right of you in these discords that are saying to the moon and the community and we're a family and a team, they're trying to take more money from this project than you are, because at the end of the day, the only way to realize a gain is to sell. And to sell, somebody is buying under you. So when you hear all of these projects say that they're a family, they're a team, they're whatever. You hear these YouTubers. I see a few of them in the crowd now. We're not going to name drop and get into all that nonsense, but you see them talk about they're a part of this community. Guys, like at the end of the day, they're all just trying to make money. They're all they're all just trying to make money. And the people now that's trying to salvage any hope in this. And I even see one person here that banned me from the new Safuu Discord for literally just calling it how it is. They continue to want to drink the Kool-Aid. They continue to want to go through this cult-like mentality because they have no other hope. They've lost their money. They feel super down and out. And the only thing left to do is to go back to the people that they feel like they've developed friendships with. But the sad thing is they're mixing, again, those friendships with the money. So it's just extremely sad to see. And this is one of the reasons why I literally have not put a single dollar in crypto for quite some time now, because there's just nothing out there. There's a few, and I hate to sound like a negative Nancy, but it truly is, and I like to be real about it. But that's kind of like my 2 cents, and kind of my biggest frustration with this is, you have people and I'll end on this. The biggest frustration with crypto and these DeFi projects is people get wrecked before a third of them learn. The 2/3 still are like, well, I'll accept my wreck and then I'll go and move on and go to this other Ponzi and then drink the Kool-Aid once again. And it's like they never learn, and they're just continuous in this perpetual cycle of getting wrecked. And maybe they get back to break even, but then they get wrecked again or whatever. And then you'll get like maybe a 1/3 of the population actually listens, like, okay, but that's the sucky part, is a lot of these people have to get wrecked, call people like myself crazy, stupid, a fudder, whatever you want to call it. But then they're the ones getting wrecked at the end of the day. But then And then they look at people like me, they not even me, like they look at people like CoffeeZilla, they look at people like Drew, all these people that call all these things out, and then they look up to them afterwards. After a week ago, they'd be calling them futters. You know what I mean? So that's the biggest frustration. So I hope at least one person here listening is like, huh,
Right.
maybe I can change.
One of the sad things about someone like CoffeeZilla, not that he's sad, the sad thing is that he is able to make a living and have a massive following based on failures like this, because that's what he does, right? He seeks out, for the most part, these scams, and he roots through all of the bad stuff that he can, and then exposes it after. I believe personally that this space can change for the better. Of course, external revenue streams need to come in. You know, if I'm going to argue the other side for a second, there are some good qualities that Bryan Legend brought to the table. His understanding of how to create a community, his understanding on how to create a sense of fun, his understanding on how to get people to buy in was there. He was able to do it to quite a significant degree. What he wasn't able to then do is let go of his ego long enough to start listening to advice on how to make it sustainable, even if that meant switching the rebasing off, getting an external revenue stream, whatever it might be, wherever he wanted to go. You know, do you think, I'm not talking about him in particular because there is no space for him in this particular DeFi world that we live in anymore, of course, and there never should have been. Do you think someone who has that basic understanding can come out from somewhere and create a project that is sustainable at some point, provided it has the necessary external revenue streams needed to maintain that money flowing?
I think the answer is within the question, that it goes about a bigger spectrum than just that. I think one huge downfall to DeFi and crypto right now, if we're talking like passive income opportunities or things like that, is people that we don't have enough true business minded people in this space. They think, let me find a revenue stream and then create a project around it. When that question itself is kind of broke, right? The question that you should be asking is, what can I provide an ease of service for, or what barrier can I fix using the technology of crypto seamlessly? You see the memes and the funny gifs and stuff all the time of crypto developers creating a problem to then find a project around. But really, you know, the external revenue source should just be the side effect of the success of the project, not the project is finding additional revenue sources. That's why I'm still laughing at the fact that so many people that are still feeling hopeful or semi hopeful about the new Discord of Safuu or whatever, and they're like, we got it, we can find, like, it's never going to work. Like Einstein said it himself, if you keep doing the same thing expecting a different result, that's the definition of insanity. We got so many people that truly, by definition, insane in this space, thinking that they can churn a revenue source like it's just like we're joking. We're talking light about a true business fundamental that creates the success of businesses, and most of businesses fail, right? So when people come to me and they're like, this project has external revenue, or they're looking for external, like, your external revenue should be a side effect from day zero of the product or the service or the ease of use that you're creating.
100%. It's usually just an afterthought. Like, I mean, also looking at a lot of protocols that we interviewed in the past, where it was just like, yeah, and looking at a roadmap, Q2 of next year, external revenue source, and we're like, okay, what happens up until then? Yeah, I just wanted to chime in then. There.
It's a good point, and somebody raises an interesting question here. He created a community, or he bought the attention of the community. There's nothing wrong with buying the attention of the community. Businesses do it every day when they pay for advertisement, right? You whether it's giving away actual dollar, whether it's giving away tokens, whether it's running an ad, you're always paying for attention. And again, credit where credit's due. He was able to do that, but the problem is he was an egotist, and that ego wasn't called out enough that it became a problem at an early stage where this kind of scenario wasn't going to happen. Because let's face it, he was a character type that was always going to do something quite significant. He was always going to do something that was going to garner the most attention, and it doesn't matter if it's a positive or a negative attention. he wanted that attention. So the writing really was on the wall that at some point he was going to just take everything away. And I don't believe he's completely gone. I think at some point he's going to come back, and there may be a last 15 minutes of fame that he can say, well, look what I did for the community. Oh, aren't I a hero? I came back. I gave this community $100,000, or, I made sure that I handed everything over here or there. That is going to be an inevitability, especially as the walls kind of close in more and more. I think one of the things that Safuu and a lot of the community in there missed is the educational part of all of this. They didn't want to be educated because, as Austin says, there's this idea of hope. There's this idea that somehow you're going to get rich off of, not a very large amount of money. And when people are pushing the rhetoric, well, I made this much, I made that much, or look how well I did, it makes that dream even easier to believe, right?
Don't forget about the calculator. Like
Yeah, I
this
mean,
calculator,
I'm
the
sure. I'm
sliders.
sure Austin has a ton to say about the calculator. I mean, but in terms of psychological tricks, that's one of the best ones you can use, right? Is tell people what they want to hear, which is how much they can earn if it's at this price and you've compounded for this amount of time, and all the while, the only thing that is causing you or forcing you to do is keep your money in the protocol. Very rarely did you ever hear take profit. It's okay to take profit. $100, $1,000, $10,000. It's okay. It's your money. You've invested it. You've speculated. It's paid off. Take that money, but be aware someone somewhere is losing. And that's the stark reality of this space, compounded by the fact that there's not an external revenue stream coming. Does anybody else want to jump up and have a conversation? Feel free to stay up here to Austin.
Alpha Cruz raised hands a hot minute ago.
No,
I appreciate you having me up here, man. I just want to, because I got to pop off here, but I seen one of your members, Pac-Man, they said, there's a few good projects. And I just want to definitely clarify, like, I'm not a negative Nancy. I still 100% love crypto. There are a few, we're not going to sit here and it's not the time or place to name them all. There are actually, there definitely are a few projects with actual true services, products, things like that in this space. And when I say like I'm not doing anything as far as DeFi and stuff, I'm talking about stuff like Safuu, like these risky DeFi projects and stuff that are just nonsense after you truly break them down. But thank you, Matt Hatter. Thank you, David, for letting me come up here. Appreciate it. I truly hope at least one person out there has learned from this experience.
Yes, I second that. Thank you, Austin. Alpha Cruz, talk to.
I mean, hopefully people have learned. Oh, that would be amazing. Good evening, sorry. Voice needed a warm up.
I believe Mahara doesn't want to talk to you. He's still salty about that you.
I'm salty about David's increasing popularity. That's the problem. What did you have to
It's
say?
a good meme. I'm just saying.
I love
Meme I
it.
made. So, I wanted to talk about the part where you mentioned, like, Brian definitely built up Safuu. Definitely did, but I remember reading that, yeah, I think 6 other failed projects before Safuu, and then it was Safuu, and then it was Safuu Go, and all of these other things. Like, the way I see it is that he was practicing. He practiced. So the first one, he figured out, okay, I can emotionally manipulate people in this way. Then the second one, he tried again, because the first one obviously failed at some point. Second one, he did it again. The third one, he continued until he eventually got to Safuu, where he built a cult. Because you understand psychology more as you try it out. The more you manipulate people, the more you learn how to manipulate people. So it's like he definitely started out with just like, okay, I can kind of do this, but I don't know how to do it yet. And then he got better and he got better, and till the point where he is now, like, a lot of scammers, a lot of people who run Ponzi schemes understand psychology. They don't understand how to make money. Not necessarily, in a sense, like they understand how to manipulate people into thinking that they can make you money. They understand how to manipulate people into believing that they are the good guys, that they are the ones that you want to back. They understand the way to manipulate people into believing into everything that they say, to the extent that they become a cult. They get drugged on copium and hopium. They get basically dragged on whatever word you say. If the person had to say, "Oh, I'm going to buy me a rocket tomorrow," they're going to be like, "Go ahead and buy the rocket, even if you use our money." They're not going to really think about what the person is saying anymore, because at some point they've taken control of everyone else's emotional side of thinking, because you more reactive based on your emotions compared to your logical brain. So it's like they've already taken control of that part of you. So no matter what they're saying, they can just somehow make you do it. Like I'm busy seeing it right around me. Um, like very, very close technically, because I know this person personally, and he's doing the exact same thing that Bryan is doing. Like, they get people's emotions, they just know how to control the way you think and subtly force you to do what they want you to do and not what is best for you or what you want to do. Because the moment you want to do something that you think is right, or that your logical brain has told you, but this ain't right, you should go about this way, they somehow emotionally blackmail you. Another way to put it, they emotionally blackmail you into thinking that whatever you are thinking is wrong. Their way of thinking, their way of doing things is the only right.
Yeah,
That's just my take.
I no, thank you, and I agree with you. Now I have a question for yourself, because you're a mod. You're in these spaces. You have control of the narrative that happens in some of these spaces. What do you think moderators should be doing better? What perhaps have you been guilty of doing that you think could have been done better? Because, like I said at the beginning, this was a tiered failed experiment. This entire process was very tiered. It came from the top, but it went all the way down to the bottom, even to the people that were moderators at any point, who, um, as Austin says, drank the Kool-Aid, who decided that they were going to enforce the rhetoric. And I understand it's a difficult position for a moderator who might be getting paid to do their work, but you're going to come across comments, questions, concerns that you might have heard for the thousandth time. That person's asking it for the first time. You're frustrated. The team might be saying, you got to get rid of that. Do you get rid of them straight away? Think you shouldn't be getting rid of them straight away? How do you think projects moving forward need to better manage their communities?
Yeah, I can definitely speak on that as a moderator. Okay, so in the first part, what have I been guilty of? Well, I've modded now for a very controversial group, Truth Seekers, technically not the Discord themselves, but one of the projects, now technically two projects that are associated with them. And whenever Truth Seekers come up with anyone, there's going to be a lot of fight in the Discord, in a sense. Like, I don't really see it as fight, but certain people do. I'm not going to mention names, or maybe I should. I don't know. Anyway, so the people that have higher permissions, the founders and partners, will see certain questions as fight. I don't. If someone comes in asking, okay, when is this going to happen? I'm going to want to answer. I'm going to try my best to answer that question. However, next thing you know, the comment is deleted. And I'm like, that wasn't even FUD. That was just someone asking a very valid question. Now, at that point, I really want to go and private message the person and explain things. But then I'm also like, should I do that? Should I just let it be? Or when someone asks a question and then they just get timed out or they get banned, and I'm like, that wasn't even relatively necessary. It wasn't in any shape or form necessary, because the person wasn't being negative. They were just asking really important informational questions. And it's frustrating because like, it just doesn't sit well with me, because I can see what the person wants to know. I am for the question and would love it answered, because it's going to help promote the community. It's going to help people who come afterwards to see, okay, they are very open. They are answering questions that are relevant. They are answering to the best of your ability. Like, these are questions that people, so many questions, informational questions that people are always going to want answered. And it's like, you keep cutting the community off. So that I would go into that. Like a lot of questions that communities and founders and moderators or even admins, sometimes the moderators also see it as fun, but like a lot of questions that people ask, they're not meant to come across as fun. They're not meant to come across as spreading fear, uncertainty, and doubt, because we identify it as fear, uncertainty, and doubt, but at the end of the day, all of those things drive you to ask questions that are informational. They are there to help you determine whether or not you want to be involved with something, if you think something is good, or if it's just going against everything that you are. And like, in a sense, it's wrong to, put a word out there and be like, oh no, you're fighting. Because at the end of the day, unless someone is saying, oh, you're so terrible, you are the worst comes in history, like, it's not fun. Everything is just informational questions. And that's where I would like communities, especially to start, like, to get to this point where they just see things as um, critique. In Web2, we call it a critique. We call it positive um, enforcements, or we call it what's the other word? Anyway, it's questions that are meant for you to be able to answer so that you can improve if it's something that you haven't done, or it's meant to, give you knowledge on something that is a problem that you might not have noticed. Like, just take it like that. Take it as I can't get to the word.
Well, it's an opportunity to educate, and I agree with you. It's one of those things where it's an opportunity to give someone the information that they need, like you say, to make an informed choice. What's frustrating, even after all of this saga is now unfolded, is that even in the Safuu Go, the new one, and the Vulcan Discord, this behavior is still ongoing. You still can't ask meaningful questions. People aren't allowing investors to vent, and that's also key. It's one of the reasons we wanted to do this, because venting is a key part of processing what's happened. And you might not like the information that's being given to you in that venting process, but it is a necessity. And already, I mean, I was just for mentioning that this chat was happening and inviting the team to come and have a conversation with us if they wanted to, I was within one sentence banned from the Vulcan Discord. It's ludicrous. I mean, why? Because I have a voice, because I ask difficult questions, because I sit on a stage and ask pointed, real questions that need real answers. And there'll be a mob that stands behind that person that banned me, throwing their hands in the air, going, "Fantastic, well done." But you've solved nothing. All you've done is got rid of someone who might have had a ton of money to invest, and or force someone who does have a voice to go away and think negatively about what you're doing. And now all I'm going to do is report my negative experience. And that just creates this snowball effect of negativity that comes in your direction. And that's one of the things that Bryan Legend didn't get right. He wanted to cultivate that kind of cult mentality, again, as I said. And equally, it's frustrating that I've asked YouTubers if they want to come up on stage and have a conversation. I've asked some of the team members from Safuu Go, from Vulcan. No one responded, really. No one has been bold enough to say, you know what, I'll come up, I'll have a conversation with you. Anybody that's listened to any of my Q&As knows by now that I'm not going to be, I'm not going to be unprofessional with you. I might ask difficult questions, but certainly there's going to be no name calling. So that accountability gets lost. And I think what you're alluding to is that mods should also, to an extent, have that accountability. Just saying we're told what to do often isn't good enough. Yes, you're told what to do. Yes, there's someone that is ultimately able to control the narrative, but that doesn't mean you can't respond to people in a way that puts the fire out before it even begins.
I think that's it's funny and I believe kind of weird that we said FUD, whatever that is. To be honest, I personally don't think FUD exists. But to set that word synonymous with asking questions, right? Because at the end of the day, what we usually also always tell protocols when we set up, for example, Q&As, when we get asked and explain them what we do, is we don't ask just these like some tougher questions. It's a subjective thing, but we these questions are not there to be harmful. These questions are designed to showcase what you know, to give possible investors or already investors a feeling of, okay, these guys know or what's up. I can trust these people. And if you start with this gatekeeping of the information, where if someone just asks a question, and even if the question has literally just been answered three questions above, I mean, of course, people can be annoying. I get that. That totally makes sense. But to just always snub the people off, just say, "Oh, that's FUD," it's helping no one. All these questions are always an opportunity to showcase if you can answer the question. If the question is BS and there's nothing true about it, then you can just refute it, and that person might look silly. Perfect solution. And if the question is valid, maybe you have to think something through. Maybe there's something wrong in the way you're doing things. So to me, where does FUD lie? Where is this thing of FUD in between? I mean, of course, I'm not talking about some people running around and saying like spreading lies, but that to me is like something completely different. So yeah, it's
I think, sorry to interject, but you
Sure.
ask a good question. And I think in this particular scenario, the FUD lay in the fact that the questions were pointing out the glaringly obvious. And most of the people that said this is FUD knew that it was obvious. They knew that the question was unanswerable, and they didn't want to hear it because ultimately they wanted to keep their bag as healthy as possible. That is why the word FUD is thrown around. A question you either can't answer with a logical, intelligent response, or it's been brought up enough times that you understand it's a problem and you want to ignore it. And that ignorance is where all of these issues come from. It's not listening to those questions. A lot of the questions that are asked are very bright people who know their stuff a lot of the time. And the harder the question, the more in-depth their knowledge. And if you can't answer it, say you can't answer it and then come back to them another day. But don't ignore it and just scream FUD, because that's just willful ignorance as far as Kevin, you jumped up.
Hey, Mad Hatter, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
What's up, guys? So, I've been thinking a lot about this, and, me and my project have been trying to help the community, but I just wanted to come up and ask one question, because this has been eating at me since he did what he did, and what I can't figure out is why would he do that? Why would he nuke a server and scatter 33,000 people? That's not a small number, okay? Like, even the big servers like Vape and Drip are dwarfed by the amount of people that were in Safuu. And like, then there's also the other sentiment. Like, yeah, Bryan was a master manipulator, but you also have to look at it from the other perspective that, thick and thin rugs and scams and Ponzi's, there was always Safuu. Was it perfect? No. Did Bryan exaggerate and overpromise? Absolutely, he did time and time again. But at the end of the day, so many people went to Safuu because, well, it's in the name. It was always there, So up or down, you could go there at least. And when he nuked that server, I don't think he realizes the level of hurt that he delivered across the entire sector. I mean, I've been talking to other project heads and calls and stuff the last 2 days, and like we're all pretty much asking the same question. It's just why? Why didn't he just transfer it to Nacho from Vulcan? Why didn't he transfer it to any of the other mods or team members? The hurt that he caused from that one selfish action, it's monumental. It's indescribable. I just don't know why.
I think it speaks to his character. If you don't mind, I'll read you a response that someone gave in another Discord. I'm not going to name them. People can go and see it for themselves if they want to. But I'll read you what this person wrote, because I think it was an interesting insight. I think it's spot on. They say, I woke up this morning to a lot of messages asking my opinion about the Bryan Legend drama. I have watched a video or two, and I'm still not very clear about what has happened. But with this said, it is always unfortunate when people put their faith in something and end up getting hurt because of bad actors or behavior. I'm never one to pile on, so I have been cautious in my response. I have had the fortune of running into several Bryan Legend type characters over the years, and my observations about their personality type is as follows. They depend on several things to allow them to continue their activities. First, they constantly tell big lies. Second, They do what they do right in the open, and in fact, they thrive on being in the open. The combination of these things always gets many to ask, why would they do both of these things? The question is then used to support the persona. Third, they always position themselves as victims and say that everybody wants them to fail because they want to help the little guy. Fourth, they are always reinventing themselves and never allow anyone to talk past their past. Fifth, they always have a team of acolytes who are fiercely protective of them. If you say anything negative, they attack you disproportionately to how you came after the person. And sixth, they frame their discussions to their advantage and never allow you to question them on topics they do not want to talk about. For me, when I see this combination of qualities, I am highly skeptical. I was with Bryan and told him so, but I also said he had a lot of earnest people supporting him, and I did not want to hurt any of those well-meaning people. I also told Bryan that I was hopeful that him interacting with that community would get him to become a better person. It appears this is wishful thinking. And I think the end result that we now have, which is nuking the Discord, is just a follow-on from that personality, which is that he needed something grandiose and he needed something impactful to keep his name alive. It's a self-serving event. It's entirely so that people continue to talk about him. And it's a punishment. It's a punishment to anybody that didn't fully support him, that wasn't wholeheartedly behind him, and didn't want to continue buying into the lies. He punished them by doing the only thing he could, which is use what tiny amount of power he had against them. And that was to remove the Discord.
I guess so, but like it just I don't know, man. I'm just so out of it right now. I just like I'm trying to I guess I'm trying to figure out from his headspace why he thought that was the best decision at the time. I mean, if it was to get people to still talk about him, surely he would want positive vibes and not negative, because everybody in the space hates him, right?
Mhm.
Everybody now. He will never have a reputation on any project, any Discord server, anything ever again. You know, he could have transferred it to somebody and people would have been like, I'm glad Bryan's gone, but he did the right thing by transferring it. Now he's just going to be that asshole who nuked the server and scattered thousands and thousands and thousands of investors.
Yeah,
And
and I agree with you. And I have a question for you then. What lesson have you taken away as a project lead and as someone who has a community? What lesson have you taken away to, I mean, minus the obvious, I obviously don't do a Bryan Legend because that's only going to go one way. But what,
I think
what have you taken away from it?
I think the thing, right, and this is also something I've taken away since I started the project with PTC, and I'm not going to get into that. We can talk about that some other time, but this does play into that. I think the big thing is you can't overpromise to investors. All right, you have to just be honest with them. Don't promise the moon. Like you were saying with these NFT projects recently, every project is launching an NFT. And it's fine, right? And you need to have utility, but don't promise them the world. And like, build something that's unique for your project that people will be interested in. Give them a realistic yield that's like actually tangibly doable. If you say, all right, 5% a month or something, right? That's realistic. That's reasonable, right? Yeah, the degens are not going to come, but screw that. Like the people that care, that'll stay and stick around for 6 months when the project's still there, those are the people you want, because they realize what you're talking about is true and doable. That's the lesson I take away is don't feed people false hopium. Don't feed people exaggerated rates and exaggerated grandiose utilities and AI based vaporization systems, and
I agree with
that yeah.
and not over promising is a good thing to take away from it. And I think the silver lining in this, if there is one, and there, for a lot of people there is no silver lining. It's very uncertain, unsteady time. We're never going to be able to, as people are commenting, understand what Bryan Legend is thinking. He's not a rational person. He's erratic. He's always going to do irrational. I think he thrives in other people being unsteady, and he thrives in other people not quite knowing where they stand. I think that's where he gets the majority of his power from. And I just believe that this is another leveraged scenario that he could use to his advantage. Paul, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm all good. Sorry, you've probably all heard enough of me for a week because I spoke for 40 minutes about all this stuff. But I just wanted to touch on what Kevin was saying, because I think one of the reasons why I think he nuked Discord was literally that toy out of the pram moment, that temper tantrum of a lack of control anymore. So when I think back to the early days of Safuu, because I was in on the original, 35, 40-second buy-in. And when I think about what happened there, it was all exciting. We were in rebasing season. Nobody really knew what they were signing up for. It was like put a token in your wallet, and next year you could have, hundreds of thousands of dollars or whatever. When Lambo calculators, all this stuff. So of course everyone's all excited about that. And you can actually tell that by looking at the announcements that he was making in the Discord. It was primarily fire emojis and, amazing, this is great, 100%, this is going to happen. And even with Safuu, as it kind of went on, even when they went through bad times, he always had some kind of answer, because I suppose he had some way of manipulating that or making it sound better than it was. And there wasn't kind of anything complex to work out. At the end of the day, it was a token without utility that was ultimately tanking in price when people sold. And he managed to dress that up for quite a long time until Vulcan Blockchain and Sacrifice and all that stuff. Now, when it came to Safuu Go, personally, I didn't understand it because there was just way too much in there. There was all these artificial intelligence layers, nail, all these random terms that I thought, this sounds really complicated to understand. If you've got like 30 or 50 or 100 liquidity pools playing around this ESCO token, no doubt somewhere it's going to go wrong. And, it's arbitrage stuff. You can be botted out. You can be front run on anything like that. And what I've started to notice in the community with these posts is that they just got more and more like laughed at almost. If you looked at like the kind of emoji split, it was no longer just loads of fires. The maxi believers or anyone who thought it was really good would obviously put the positive messages in. But I was seeing a lot more of the clown emojis, the turd emojis, the negative, the laughing faces of like, oh my God, is this guy for real? And I think at the end, what had really happened is he completely lost the room. People weren't believing in it. Nobody wanted Yom Pool. Well, I say that, but the vote suggested that some people did want this Yom token, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even though that vote was winning in the end, I just think he probably felt, even though this is winning, I've lost probably 40, 50% of my audience. They now think don't know what I'm doing. He was making too many changes. He was basically tinkering with the engine and not giving it enough time to run. And the result of that was, an unstable project. Nobody knew what was going on. I mean, we were told that you were going to get one Safuu Go token for $20 is going to equal a $323 token. And then that turned into like $30. And then eventually it was $5, 1-to-1. And I really just think he'd run out of ideas with it. And ultimately that caused him to, he couldn't make head or tail of what he really wanted to do with it. He didn't have all the answers. And in the end, it was like, we're going to need this new project, Yomp. We're going to have to start again, just accept the loss, or I'll shut it all down. And I think when he saw all the negativity about it, he probably just thought, you know what, sod it. I've had enough. I can't be bothered. I'll just leave and shut it down. I actually thought he'd just paused it at first, or because I know you can deactivate Discord servers.
Mm-hmm.
You can make them disappear completely for a while. So I thought, this will probably be back tomorrow, but it wasn't. And then when we started seeing the announcements, Bryan Legend's actually gone this time. He's given up.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think you're right to try to. You said as much in your video. I think he play around to keep people on side, and he had lost the room. A question for you is, why do you think he didn't lose the room sooner? Obviously, we had in the build up to Dubai, for example, there were a bunch of things that are happening. I already mentioned one at the top of this, him buying a necklace for an extortionate amount of money, people kind of gushing over how wonderful it was, this garish thing that he was going to have around his neck, to show off to how much money he had, I suppose. But one of the things that really flew by quite quickly and wasn't targeted enough, and it wasn't targeted by the people that are currently sitting at the top of Vulcan and who are meant to be taking money to build out this blockchain, and I include the company that he brought in and Nick, because I haven't seen much out of him either. Bryan effectively did admit that he had the keys to the fire pit, something that was meant to have been this sacred burn wallet that no one was ever going to be able to touch. And he ultimately came out and said, oh, by the way, I did have the keys, but look, I didn't do anything with them, so aren't I great? At that stage, I expected everything to go down very, very fast, and it didn't. Why do you think that is?
I didn't say the cult word, but there is a large element of that. There's a large element of people saying, yeah, but he didn't actually touch the funds in it, so therefore it's okay. Whereas a lot of people looked and thought, and to be fair, I did a video on that. At the time, I didn't really worry too much about it. I thought, okay, I've already sacrificed into Vulcan or whatever. It's a done thing for me, quite selfishly, I would say, from my perspective. But really, I think a lot of people did call him out on it. I definitely got a lot of comments in a video that I did around that time saying he just literally admitted to lying to everyone. You suck type thing, which is totally fair, right? Because it's a real thing. And I think because there was other stuff going on at the same time, there was this, the Vulcan move and stuff. Because ultimately, Safuu, he kind of pitched it that Safuu was to go into Vulcan. And the only reason Safuu go and all the rest of it was still around was because there was this kind of strong feeling that people didn't want to go to this Vulcan blockchain. And they were like, why can't we just have our token and carry on? And for a while it did, right? It went off into a kind of renounced public contract DAO type thing. I think Elliot was looking after it, if I recall. But that was like a big thing. And he announced that in a Medium article, which I thought was quite odd, because you wouldn't normally announce something like that as a public, this is amazing. That I lied to you, but it was great because we did a trust exercise and it worked. But a lot of people, including myself, kind of got wrapped up in the fact that there's other stuff going on. There was still, all this kind of Safuu go nail stuff and this complicated jargon didn't really exist yet. It was all kind of, it was still what we're going to do with Safuu type stuff. And now they've got this sacrifice event and there's somewhere for people to put their money. I can now tell everyone all along. And maybe you didn't spend any of that money. I don't know. But for all intents and purposes, I think that's the vibe that a lot of people had, is that, if you didn't spend it, it's okay. But obviously anyone who was doubtful about Bryan at all, and anyone who's doubted him from the start, that was a field day, right? Because it's the perfect opportunity to say, he lied, and here's the proof that I've been trying to tell you all about for years. When I come in here and I shame Bryan, it's because he's a liar, and this is what, and they will literally jump on that and every fact. And I mean, now it's like Oliver On-chain must be enjoying himself, right?
yeah, he's having the mother of all parties as we speak, I imagine. Yeah,
he is under a different name. So I think he's back on YouTube somewhere under a different channel name, completely different channel name. I don't know what it is, but
back onto YouTube the minute this happened. I think the lesson to be learned from that particular scenario with the fire pit, for anybody that's going into any kind of project that has a similar situation to hand, if the question isn't immediately answered and he can't prove that he doesn't have the keys, you should be asking very serious questions as to whether or not that's where you want to. Because,
by the way, sorry to interject for a second. Is my microphone working again?
Yes, it is.
I've been speaking all this time, and I thought all of you guys were rude.
I hate when that happens.
No, I just wanted to add on, just as a silly remark, this kind of fire pit situation feels very Satoshi Nakamoto-esque, right? Like there's this person maybe having access to this wallet, maybe not, who knows? But maybe that kind of plays into that whole ego situation as well, right? But I mean, I don't even, to add on to that as well, I don't even want to know how many people got banned for questioning if he had the keys or not. I just want to throw that out. Like, rest in peace to all the people that got banned out of Safuu very early on, and
yeah, a large amount of people got nuked for that question. But it's a question that was raised, and if it wasn't answerable, then frankly, people at that stage should have been really asking questions whether or not it was the place for their funds. Kevin, you had a question.
Yeah, I one, but first I wanted to like touch on what Paul was just saying is like Ryan to me, you know, for the longest time he was able to make the charade continue because he had little tricks, like you were saying, Mad Hatter. You know, I remember when Safuu first had, you know, its first real down dip, you know, a while back, and he was able to spin it and he pumped a little bit of money in. Now, of course, hindsight 2020, we know what he did. He threw like 20 grand of Ponzi-nomic money back into the liquidity pool from the taxes and dressed it up as, you know, look, it's pumping back up. And, you know, the sentiment changed in the room because nobody was actually bothering to look at the stuff underneath the table. They just saw the bountiful feast. And, you know, he was able to do that for a long time. And, you know, hence why Brian Stelter, the legend of, you know, Bryan Legend, you know.
Right.
But anyways, my question really is about, you know, Vulcan now, because what we have, and I don't know if you saw the announcement, and you know, for anyone who's wondering about what Mad Hatter was saying earlier about them banning people, they ban everybody. Like I got banned simply for mentioning that my project was helping Safuu people. I know of at least 2 other project heads who got immediate bans for mentioning Safuu in any way, shape, or form. So, yeah, they don't play around over there mentioning it. Just goodbye. But anyways, my question is, so they put out that statement saying that like Bryan was going to be a background shareholder of Vulcan and he wouldn't have any access to anything, blah 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 blah. But at this point, can we trust the team over there? And I'm not trying to throw shade at Nacho or any of the devs; they're good guys, but at this point, can we trust that Bryan truly doesn't have access to anything? Because as we know, a proof of authority chain gives you a lot of power. For example, you can remove nodes remotely. The only reason proof of authority chains like Binance don't do that because that would just be absolutely foolish, right? They're a big ass company. You know, as a people, they'd face way too much backlash and legal headache. But Vulcan's young and new, and like, you know, nobody would bat an eye if a node disappeared, and that's my point. Is, you know, things like this. I want to know what the plan is, and I'm sure a lot of people want to know what the plan is as far as Bryan giving up server ownership, because he is the server owner, from my understanding of the Vulcan Discord.
Yeah.
And you know, I want to know, does he have access to any of the keys to the castle for Vulcan Chain? Because if he does, that's bad. And I guess the last question is the $150,000 that he has sitting of investor money that we know from that announcement. What's going to go on with that?
It's a good question. As somebody's also asked, what does my gut say about Vulcan? I don't know if you want to take this one first, David, or shall I jump straight in?
If you already have a thought, then shoot away. I'm thinking about it.
You know, I'm looking around at some of the projects that have come out of the Safuu space. I'm also in the Safuu Go Discord. I would be inclined to say I'm more I'm trying to gather my thoughts, but I'm just going to be brutally honest. Do I think Vulcan is going to be successful? Quite honestly, no, I don't. I don't believe they're necessarily going to be able to launch the blockchain, and I don't think they're going to be able to deliver on half the things that they say they will. I don't think the team have displayed any form of leadership during this entire process. I don't think anybody has come forward and really taken the reins. I think they've all been particularly weak in their silence. I don't think that anybody has shown that they are prepared to stand up and say, we messed up, we need to fix some things, and this is how we're going to fix it. I think the fact that they haven't made an announcement about where the funds are, the fact that they're silent, haven't done Q&A, all of those things to me suggest that the team simply, or granted, I'm sure they're in limbo, but it doesn't take much effort to get in front of a camera. I've been doing it for the past year and a half, 2 years, whatever it is. It doesn't take much to talk to the people and say, this is what we do know, this is what we're working towards, and this is going to be our plan moving forward. the wishy-washy announcements that I've seen so far, in which they say we will give you something, just haven't been strong enough, and that's a shame. And I believe that the company that they brought in to build the blockchain saw an opportunity for their product to be showcased, and I don't think they feel they have any allegiance towards Vulcan. I just think that they want a product to work, and that's perfectly okay, because they're not Vulcan. They're a totally separate company. So that's kind of like the honest to that.
I kind of agree.
Oh
with
shoot!
that.
Did you guys see that comment? That one guy who talks about the top 7 wallets being Brian's. I didn't know that. Is that true? Does Brian actually own the top 7 wallets of Vulcan?
Well, I mean,
that's nuts.
Yeah, I think they were suggesting he's like, when they're saying he's like a shareholder. I mean, not only in the company, but I wouldn't be surprised if he has the biggest supply of the tokens, because it's his thing, really, for sure. And I called this out as well. Mad Hatter, exact same thing. I do not know why they weren't on this the second it was announced. Why someone wasn't saying, put out an announcement and reaffirm people's confidence that your money's safe and whatever, because they should be knowing what people are going to think, right? They're immediately thinking, okay, deleted that Discord. The next thing is, what's next? Is he going to delete the Vulcan Discord? Is he going to just, I don't know, are the sacrifice funds safe? We also found out some, I don't know whether this is now been confirmed as fine, but from what I read on the roadmap, it doesn't look like they've built the multi-sig yet. I mean, maybe they have, and maybe they're just going to do something else with it later. But the way it looked to me is like, oh, we'll stand up the multi-sig later in the next phase or whatever it is. In which case, currently, your money is under the control of potentially one person. Now, that might have been addressed since then, and someone might have already confirmed that in the chat. I don't know, because I just got fed up with it yesterday. So I turned it off. But they need to, if they've got any chance of even doing it, if they can without Brian, then they need to be taking leadership on it now and making it very clear that this is the plan and this is why your investment is safe with us. Obviously, not that you can really do anything about it, because for the first 4 months you can only get out 1% of your bag, right? Because of the vesting schedule change that they did recently, to 0.25% a month. So for the first 4 months, people can't really dump anyway. And even after that, I mean, it's going to be 16 months on from when they launch at the end of this year, if they do. So you're looking nearly 2 years from now before people can really start, I don't know, impacting the project as such. But it's really strange that the team didn't kind of come out and do that. I mean, they were in the chat for many, many hours yesterday. I think, was it Jason said he was in there for like 7 hours? And in that time, it was just in the chat. I didn't see any kind of like announcements of like, we've done this to give you confidence or whatever, and here's what's going on next. And we've just chatted with him and we've found out this and that and the other. It all seemed to be a little bit, I don't know, slow. And then they're all just saying, let's just wait for the next day, mate. Let's let it cool off. It's like, I don't think anything's going to cool off until people can be calm about it. That's just like saying, if your house is on fire, let's just wait for it to burn out completely.
Right, yeah, before we throw some water on it. Yeah.
It's madness.
I agree. It just smacks of a lack of leadership. And whether or not that be because they didn't have an internal structure in place, if something happened, Brian, or nobody wants to put their ass on the line, or they know, for example, a CoffeeZilla video is coming out and that isn't going to look good. Whatever it might be, like you say, if they want to stand any chance of being able to do something, anything with it. Now, that doesn't even bring in the question, like Austin raises, is there any good reason for it to even be there? Will it work? And ignore that. Just getting to the end goal is going to require them to act as a coherent team. And you really ought to kick your damage limitation in immediately and start putting out reasonable, informative announcements that give the investors and people that are wanting to invest, or anybody that's kind of involved in some idea of what your thought process, even if you don't have all the answers. And it worries me that they haven't done that. They haven't chosen to do that. And I think that's a deliberate choice. I don't think it's something that has just happened because they don't know what to do.
I agree, actually. And, and to add to that real quick, beyond investors, which are the lifeblood of any chain and any project, to be sure, but as we are talking about a chain that is going to be primarily run by node validators and independent node validators at that, this goes back to the keys to the castle problem. Until they prove that Bryan doesn't have access to the back end, I do not foresee anybody signing up and buying more nodes. I just don't, even the light nodes, because why? You're literally risking your money, your time, your patience, your energy for somebody who could just delete your node on you remotely. And that's it. There's no recourse, there's no recovery, you lose. The end. And beyond that, Vulcan also has a problem. They have not addressed in the last 2 days that I've seen. Maybe I'm mistaken. I'm banned there, so maybe they have since, but to my knowledge, nobody from Vulcan has talked about the sacrifice issue, because a lot of people sacrifice Safuu, to help Vulcan come to fruition, right? And that was, truth be told, Bryan was the one who set that up, but the Vulcan team was supposed to, carry that into the plans, and they have not talked about it at all. So that's a big question. Are they going to honor the sacrifice? Because if they're not, now we have a problem of, okay, are you going to refund everybody? Because a lot of people put a lot of money to make Vulcan even viable up to this point. So,
I believe I saw a couple of screenshots on Brute's Twitter, where they kind of like were collecting Bryan's Bryan's opinion on the sacrifice. It was something like, in the medieval age, if they sacrificed the virgin to get if the king sacrificed the virgin to get some rain for the crops, and it didn't happen, the rain didn't happen, would you ask God back for the sacrificed virgin? And that kind of was like, that's a weird assessment to make. But I would also think it's very interesting. I believe it was right around like now exactly 24 hours ago that Bryan posted his last message, I believe, in Vulcan. I was right around falling asleep, and then I got pinged by Sarukir to show us the message, Madhead and I. And the first thing that Saru asked is, hey, so can anyone explain, or Bryan, can you explain what's happening now to the sacrificed funds? Like, I mean, they obviously they
check
got.
the chat. Check the chat real quick, Dave.
Oh,
I
yeah.
didn't mean to cut you off.
Nothing.
Yeah, look at that picture.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at that picture.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, a couple of these, a couple more, I believe. Exactly. Nothing is invested. It is sacrificed. You are not owed anything. Stop playing the victim card. Please look up the definition of sacrifice, my dude. No expectations. I mean, that is how many months? Like, that's right around 4 months ago. And yeah, anyways, that's what I was referring to. I believe there was also one with medieval virgin thing. So please don't think I'm crazy. Yeah, okay. Thank you, Hey Eve. You just posted it. So you can go to the Q&A stage question channel to check it out, to read it yourself. It was a fun laugh for me. But yeah, I mean, Starwell then immediately asked, like, what is happening with the funds? And it's crazy how much backlash he got immediately. And like, just for asking the question. And then I jumped in like a couple of minutes later, like it was total chaos after he posted the message and asked him, did you get any answer? I mean, I didn't want to scroll through everything. And he was like, nope, nothing happened. And of course, I mean, the team is probably in the dark. They don't know what's happening at the moment. But I mean, that's, I don't know, like that just enforces the question, like, are the team at the moment fit or not? I don't know.
I'm gonna have to agree with Mad Hatter here. I don't think they're fit because their own words betray them. This is a team that has been eerily silent since this came out, and of the few updates they did give, all I've seen them say is, "Oh, Bryan's just gonna be a background shareholder." Whether that means Vulcan or shares in a company that may come to fruition, we don't know what that means. But background shareholder was the term we all saw, and that's concerning. He should have zero to do with the project if they want any snowball's chance of this thing coming and actually being trusted by people. Nobody is ever going to work with Bryan ever again.
No,
Ever.
I mean that's a certainty, and it comes down to actions speak louder than words. Their actions are speaking volume. So, could I change my mind? I'm always open to someone proving me wrong. If the team come out with a well thought out plan moving forward, they produce a ton of proof that people can look through. They're willing to step outside of their comfort zone and not just speak to people in their Discord where the narrative can be controlled, but step into other spaces. I don't care if it's a Twitter Spaces, on YouTube, another space that is like this one. It doesn't have to be us, anybody. Go and speak to someone who isn't going to ask you a question that you're prepared for. And if you can then give coherent responses, then maybe my mind could be changed. But until that happens, I can't have any confidence. One of the things I do want to raise, and I'm keen to get your guys' thoughts, and if anybody else does want to jump up on stage, just put your hand in the air, is that Bryan Legend, calling anybody that even in this space that calls themselves the CEO of anything, has to be very aware. If you do it for long enough, you are putting yourself, and this is David's favorite phrase, in a position of perceived authority. So whether or not this space is regulated to the extent it should be, or people believe it needs to be, it doesn't matter. When you say you're a CEO, you are telling people that you are at the helm of a company. So you're effectively telling people they bought shares in that company. And not only that, but you're telling people you're responsible for that company. So I also don't believe that there is not going to be any recourse for Bryan Legend. I think there is a very strong possibility that there could be recourse, purely based on the wording of how he set up his business. Saying things like sacrifice, doesn't mean you're owed something. No, technically the word sacrifice does not. And actually, I remember when that first came out, one of the first things I raised, the only reason I wasn't kicked is because I had a large bag of Safuu at the time and they didn't want me to dump effectively. One of the first things I asked is, why are you calling it a sacrifice? I don't like that word, because that suggests that we are doing it voluntarily and you're not going to be responsible for anything that wants you. But he has said repeatedly he is the CEO, and that snapshot that we got that people have and is doing the round, even though it was deleted, clearly states he resigned. And from a legal standpoint, that starts to narrow the amount of excuses you're going to be able to give if someone does decide to take action. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
That's scary stuff. Yeah,
I agree.
There's nothing legal. It's like, just give me some money, mate. There's no contract. Maybe there is some kind of smart contract. I don't know how that works, to be honest. One of the things I should learn, probably. But yeah, that's odd, an odd word.
DeFi is a funny place because, we all come here, right, because of the decentralized nature, right? You own your assets, not your keys, not your crypto, all that mantra. But at the end of the day, right, to run a project, there has to be some level of trust between the investor and the team that's running that project. You can minimize that with multi-sigs and KYC and services like you do, Mad Hatter and David, right? But at the end of the day, there is some level of minimum trust that somebody has to place in the team to run the project and generate the yields. And, that's all well and good in the few projects that actually keep their promise and don't do bad things. But more often than not, what we see is people that power trip and they completely abuse that trust beyond wildest imagination. And Bryan Legend or Shelter or Sailor, whatever his real last name is, he is the perfect encapsulated example of that taken to its logical extreme conclusion.
Yes, he is.
Now, ironically, with a surname like Sailor, he almost did the Titanic thing, right? Because he should have gone down with the ship, but he didn't. He jumped on the first boat and just left us in the water.
He did. Now, is there a positive to be taken from his actions? in some perverse way, did he do the right thing but in the wrong way? I mean, he obviously did the right thing by stepping away. Nobody
I
wanted.
mean, just imagine if Mr. Bill Gates decided to step down from Microsoft and he just deleted Microsoft's legacy. Yeah, I don't think it would ever happen. It can only happen in DeFi because it's a crazy world. But
I think the equivalent in that example would be if Bill Gates left Microsoft, but he set off a nuke at Microsoft headquarters, and like everybody was blown up, and all of their infrastructure was obliterated into nothing in seconds. Because that's basically what he did. He scattered 33,000 people and said, "Go be confused, angry, and scared. I don't care." It's the most selfish thing you can possibly do. That's why I say I'm just confused, because like for all the bad that he caused, right? He had a perfect opportunity to leave humbly. He could have been, yeah, you screwed up. You're a dumbass, but you did the right thing by stepping down and handing it over to somebody else. He could have done that, and this very call we're having right now could have been on very different, circumstances. But he chose to do the selfish thing, and now everybody in the entire community across the space is left picking up the pieces of his mess, and that's just not cool, man. It's not. It's not fair.
I'd like to see, especially for the projects that are offshoots, and I'm not advocating for any of those projects. I'm saying that they're going to. I'm not saying they're not going to be successful, but there are some projects that are still around. There are some kind of embers that are still burning for some of the things that Bryan created. And what I would like to see is more of the people, especially those that had a very strong voice advocating for Bryan for so long. I'd like to see them really step behind those communities and help, even if it is just to help a few people break even, or see if they can create something that might be around for a meaningful amount of time, whatever that might be. I think there is a way to turn some of this into a positive, and that would be, to me, a logical step. So it would be a real shame if a lot of these people do turn their backs and say, well, I'm not coming to this ever again, because of the actions of one narcissistic individual. David, did you want to talk through that message?
Oh no. Hey, I'm just also reading it. Hey, Eve, they shared a leaked message from Plan B. That apparently, like from Jason, that apparently they ran out of money and he gave me too long, didn't read. They're firing everyone. His ex-admin CK says they're running out of money. And that's from 2 weeks ago, that message. Hey, Eve wanted me to point it out to you.
Is everybody aware of this message?
Yeah, I'm aware of it.
Maybe I missed that one.
That brings up another question I actually had, Matt. Or maybe you've heard of this. So, as far as I'm aware, and I've been talking to other people like Oliver and his team. Shout out to you in the chat, buddy, from One Token. But Vulcan, the chain itself, is a modified fork of ETH, basically an ETH-based chain, which is fine, right? I'm not hating on forking anything, right? That's not the problem here. The problem is timing and broken promises. When you fork something, right, and you make modifications to it, that's a hell of a lot easier than coding something by scratch yourself, right? The people that made Bitcoin clones didn't have to do nearly as much work as Satoshi did making Bitcoin. And so my question then is, if that's the case, why is it taking them so long to hit milestones? Why delay after delay after delay on everything? I
mean, I haven't followed Vulcan. I mean, just very sparingly, and that's also something that I have asked myself time and time again. Especially now that, like, when was the last announcement? Like a couple of weeks ago, that it's getting delayed again. That was very curious to me. I mean, of course, I'm not very proficient in that and how it works, but I mean, in the meantime, while Vulcan, like when it was still called Safuu X, up until now, I mean, probably like dozens of blockchains have been, or thousands of blockchains have been created out of thin air, basically. So I don't know. I mean, it's also quite interesting. I mean, does anyone know? Because that's a question to you again. What is Nick? What is his name? Nick Caliani saying anything to that? Like, is he giving any updates, or is it just like always a pushback next week, next month, and all of that?
Is that a question for me or for Kevin?
For everyone on the stage, if anyone knows something. I mean, if no one knows, I mean,
I'm sorry.
I mean, also
Repeat the last part of. Could you repeat the last part of that question? I didn't hear it.
no. I'm just curious that Nick Caliani, like the from what was it called, the company again, Hyperverse, who they were responsible for creating the blockchain, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They did. Yes, they did develop a lot of the back end. That is true. Yes. But
So did he
just looking in
update
there
on
for you.
anything on that, or? Oh, okay.
I haven't heard anything. But like, even still, right? Like, it's like you're saying, the last big update was a couple weeks ago, and it was basically to tell everyone, yeah, sorry, we have to delay again. Which, no surprise there. And there's a lot of questions I have about Vulcan, and I'm really not trying to FUD here. I wish it the best. I'm probably not going to get involved just because there's too many red flags in my head. I have the same feeling I had about Safuu Go. There was a point where me and my team discussed, maybe doing like a SGO router with our token, and we decided against it because I looked at it and I saw all this AI stuff like Paul was talking about it, and it's utter nonsense, nail and vaporization, and it's the classic bait and switch of big complex terms to obfuscate the obvious, which is that it's a whole lot of nothing. And I'm not saying that's the exact equivalent of what's going on with Vulcan. It's just that there's too many red flags. Bryan's still having some involvement. What's going on with the sacrifice? Apparently nothing. There is no reimbursement for the sacrifice. Sorry, you're screwed, everyone. Like, that's messed up, man. And you gotta talk about the delays, and there's too much shadiness going on. And the team, like you were saying, Matt Adder, like, they've completely dropped the ball on communication. It would take 2 seconds for any one of them to write out an announcement right now and give everybody some clarity, some confidence, and some relief, but they're not doing that. So, you know what I mean? I'm not really going to get involved because I don't really see enough positivity to put my mind at ease. That's just me personally, though.
I think instinct tells me that perhaps there's an element of the common denominator struggling to work with people that perhaps help. So I imagine Bryan clashes with what I suspect is a very thin knowledge base on how to build a blockchain, how to even fork, and wants maximum input. Secondary to that, I also suspect that they raised funds based on implementing few elements towards the blockchain that simply don't exist, or they can't get to exist. So now they're in a predicament where they've raised for things like I don't even imagine that these nodes are going to work in the manner with which they would, and I think that's been a big problem for them. What they're now trying to do is scramble, find a solution mathematically that doesn't mean that they're going to be giving people literally a penny to the dollar, effectively. And that's just why everything keeps getting delayed.
I agree. And if they're relying on Bryan to give them details on how to code this blockchain, I think we're all screwed, because this is a guy who, I don't know if you saw the comment, I actually died of laughter. This is like a day before he nuked the server. When he first announced YOMP, the quote was, if rebasing causes out of control inflation, then negative rebasing will surely cause deflation, which technically, yes, he is correct. But like, the fact that it took him like all of that thought process to like come to that realization, but like it's such an elementary school of thought, and like I'm just like, do you not understand blockchain, man? How long have you been a project head? Like, we don't expect CEOs to know everything about blockchain. I'm not going to say I know Solidity, but Jesus Christ, man, I can at least explain functions and have a conversation about how blockchain works. This is the guy who's like, oh, negative rebasing? That's a thing? Yeah. Welcome to blockchain, bro.
Yeah, I think there's obviously a lot that we can say about Bryan Legend. A lot of stuff that we can. I mean, we're always going to be able to, tons 2 years worth of communication daft, and what I suppose we're keen not to do is get too much into a situation whereby we're just kind of laughing at him. I think what really we ought to all want to take away from this and try to take away from this is the educational point, which is how do we help future investors? How do we help people avoid falling into this kind of trap again? Statements like the one I read out, where you understand somebody's personality type, that's a good start. Asking the right questions, but also going to the places that are going to deliver the right answers is also good. Making sure that collectively we do create spaces, be it in our own Discord as a project, or be it in an independent Discord like this, or on a YouTube channel, creating a space where people can have opinions like the ones we're sharing here and thoroughly discuss them without fear of being muted, banned, kicked off stage, laughed at.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna ban all of you at the end of the conversation, by the way, for funny, okay?
Hey. I will meme that. Please don't.
I think that is where we need to start moving forward with this, because it's a very new space. We don't know an awful lot about it. There are some very bright people in this space, and I think we need to utilize those people and really pick their brains as much as we can, as often as we can, uncensored, in order to really get the juicy information we need to make informed decisions.
We had a conversation about that, or like a written conversation in the global chat. Alpha Cruz also was there. It was about this, of course, throwing around, do your own research on that. What I always like to emphasize is the fact, or what investors most often ignore. Of course, do your own research. Everyone can read a white paper today. I mean, guys, go a couple years back and look at look at more intricate projects. Look how white paper actually look like. They're not 5 pages long. They're filled with mathematical equations, and you probably won't understand a thing. But what I'm getting to is the lack of information is also some kind of information for you to make some kind of base decision for your investment. If there is something missing that you would think is important to you, and maybe and that gives you the wrong feeling, maybe don't invest sometimes. And that's a thing. Like now with Bryan, he always smoke and mirrors, things changing, gatekeeping information, changing information. I think in these times it's super hard for investors to make to do their own research if the rules constantly change, right?
Yeah, and I think. Oh, sorry, go on, Pam. After you, I speak far too much as it is. So after you.
so do I. If you're not seeing my videos, I was just going to say, like, to be honest, in some white papers nowadays, I see them as like 80% marketing and 20% useful information, because like the only bit that really people are trying to work out is, okay, there's a supply of tokens, and then there's a pie chart that tells you where it's all going, and you're immediately thinking, okay, well, who's it going to? Is the vesting schedules? Am I going to get dumped on launch? Have they got early access to X, Y, and Z? Have they already got funds due to them as well out of that for the raise, all this stuff? But the first few pages are always like, we've decided to crack down on DeFi and make the world a better place. And the first, 5 pages are primarily just boasting about why their solution is going to work. It's not like a white paper that you might see for Binance's blockchain or something, which has got really complicated stuff and is like eye-watering and not something I'd ever want to read, even at bedtime. But I think a lot of people are still stuck a little bit in the what's the fastest way I can make money, and what's the least amount of time I can spend in getting to do that. And that's worrying, because what that means is that you'll get people who will do the usual thing, right? They'll watch a YouTube video from someone, even like myself, right? They'll say, Paul's mentioned a project on a video. Oh, we must just invest in it blindly. And I've had comments like that before, say, I'll definitely be getting into this. I'm like, what, based on an 8-minute video that I just did? That's a pretty crazy assertion to make. But I think a lot of people don't want they don't want to sit down and do 40 hours of research and vet the team and do the maths on the tokens. They don't want it. They want someone else to tell them that it's okay to do it. And then it ultimately gives them a scapegoat to shout at later, which has happened to me in a number of projects before where I've talked about them on the channel and then they've decided to rug or whatever, or turned off or this. And I don't know how we're going to change that mentality, because I think it's human nature. Is people want the least amount of attention wasted on something. I mean, you already see it on social media. The attention span of people is now at the level of like 15 seconds. That's what TikTok is based on. People's attention spans can't go longer than that. So if you do like a 50-minute video talking about everything technical about it, a lot of people won't bother watching it. They'll just be like, sod it, I'll just ape in and worry about it later. And as Austin pointed out earlier, those are the people that get wrecked because they're not fully educated. So you should be kind of looking at a multitude of things. And we've talked about this in chat on Twitter as well, Mad Hatter. We were kind of saying you take not just one video, but maybe 10, 15, 20, or maybe you watch some AMAs, you get a feel for the team, you get a vibe for how they are, you monitor it, and then obviously you do your technical research as well. And then at that point, if you still feel like you're comfortable and you can make an investment, then always have that last stop of you could lose all your money in this. Right. But I don't think a lot of people are doing that, though. I think they're just aping in, especially in Safuu. I'm pretty sure most people didn't know how it worked.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think one of the things to look at often is, especially, when you go out eating and you perhaps have traveled abroad, right? One of the things people always say is always look out for where the locals are eating. And I think that should be applied to information as well, especially in niche spaces such as, ours, DeFi. Who are the people that are operating within the space, talking to? Where do they spend their time? Who do they listen to? Who do they interact with? Because those are the spaces, those are the videos you ought to be watching. More likely than not, you're going to get very good information. Just to throw this in here, just to let everybody know, Safuu Go had announced yesterday or maybe earlier today that Bryan might transfer $150,000 to the multi-sig. That's the liquidity
Possibly,
took, I believe.
Possibly.
He's done that now. It's been confirmed in the multi-sig.
Oh, it's been confirmed?
It has. I'm just
Is
reading now.
Is there a transaction hash to confirm that?
I am going to see if I can find.
Because I'm in the server with them too. I saw that.
By the way, Bryan's Twitter is also back right now.
There you go. There's the multi-sig address. You go. One of the things I wanted to say.
Have you heard me, guys, or is my microphone?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Bryan Legend's Twitter is back.
Oh, it is.
You're also back, Alpha.
Do we need to go and forget
Twitter is also back now.
Do we need to say
okay, so sorry. Yeah. After all good for all forgiven. Hey.
I think also part of research can be to take a look. Oh, he's only got one follower, bless him. I might follow him. Take a look at good teams that are transparent, even if you're not going to invest in a protocol. And again, I'm not advocating for any protocol. I don't know which ones will and won't succeed, but there are some very good teams out there who are knowledgeable. There are teams out there that are transparent with their information, answer the best of their ability. I'll call a particular protocol out for a team that does that very well. And the reason I'm calling these guys out, and I urge people to take a look at their Q&As, because they know the field they want to operate. they are bringing a knowledge base to this space rather than coming into the space and building out what they think is going. That's Lamona. I see Mike sitting here. I was thoroughly impressed simply by the way they communicated what it is they wanted to do and how they wanted to do it. Now, I can't say it's going to be successful. I can't say it's not going to be successful. I simply don't know. That time remains to be seen. That remains to be seen in time, and it's their job to deliver. But I can absolutely say that as a team, those are the kind of people that you want running projects. They might not have all the answers or get all the answers right, and they might not appeal to you as personality types, but simply by the way they conduct themselves and the information they give, they are standing ahead of the crowd in terms of doing things the right way for investors that are coming in. I think that's the kind of thing that we're looking at. I don't think we should be afraid to highlight people like that either and say they're doing really well. Don't know how well it's going to do, but they're doing really well right now at this.
I 100% agree with you, to be honest. You know, I usually use this analogy when I'm talking to other people about this stuff. Often in DeFi, we like to think of project heads and teams the same way we think of Satoshi Nakamoto, who now, in legend is this benevolent dictator who humbly stepped down, and let the chain run and all that. And that's fine, but the reality is that not everybody is, as benevolent as Satoshi was. People can be bad actors and are bad actors. Unfortunately, as of recently, more often than not. And yeah, I think we as a community need to just apply more pressure on teams to not be that. We don't want benevolent dictators. We want teams of people that we know and relate to who have good ideas that are logically sound. And the key here is that those ideas can survive scrutiny. Like when you and David asked them a question of like, okay, but how does it work and how are you going to fund that? If they can answer that question, and in an educated and easy to digest way, then there you go. That's the difference between a good project and a bad, is if the idea formulated can survive scrutiny.
Yeah, I agree. And also having the gumption to stand up and say, I don't know the answer to that, I'll come back to. That's also okay. And that's something that Bryan Legend didn't utilize enough, is I don't have the answer, I'll come back. It was the best form of attack rather than taking a measured approach. But again,
Absolutely.
to not be just slamming him too often, one of the things that I've heard from several project leaders is that they admire the manner with which he was able to create. Shouldn't be lost on anybody either. We're all having this conversation because he was able to bring people together. This Discord exists because he brought it together. That doesn't justify any of the things that he's done that have negative protocol. That is something that people take a lesson. Because he's a bad actor and isn't a very nice guy and does things, doesn't mean he doesn't do things well and does things to team. Silence the room.
Oh, that picture,
Nice.
dude. What
What
is that?
tears
Is that
fell
real?
out.
Is that real, Paul? Is he actually in the server, man? That's crazy.
He's in the Safuu Go server, yeah. But it's someone
crazy.
called B Legend. It could be somebody playing the joke, right?
That's what I'm saying, dude. That's what I'm thinking. There's no way Bryan would have the balls to go into that server. There's no way.
I mean, feel free.
Guys, can you make me
invite him on
admin,
the
please?
stage. If somebody wants to invite him on stage now, they're more than welcome.
Oh yeah, please, if Bryan would come on stage, that would be amazing. I would mute myself just to listen. I would leave the stage and let him be here just to hear the conversation that would come from him being here. That'd be beautiful.
It would be certainly a good end to the conversations we've been having, right? Does anybody else want to jump up on stage, or does anybody else have any other points that they want to raise?
The only thing I just wanted to just touch on again, it's something that I'm going to look to do going forward is try and find a way to. I mean, it's been talked about before, trying to, not just holding yourself to a higher standard, but just trying to give a bit more than you give. It's very easy to kind of, as a content creator, just find what works for you and your viewers. But I think when you're talking about financials and seeing what's happened with this and potentially anything else that could happen, right? If something looks sketchy, you should be allowed to call it out you don't have to be a dick about it. But some people like to do it like that. I don't. But we should be able to call these things out and find a way to share them in some way. And communities like this is what that's for, right? As was just chatting about in the chat, and I agree. So that's something I've taken away from this, as after having the weekend to think about it, is what can I do a bit more better at.
Right.
To kind of help with that, to share that information, to point out where there is a hole. You can be positive about something, but you should point out where you can't see something. Where is there a potential gap here? Where is the possibility of a failure? And it's not to be nasty, it's just to make people aware that you see a gap here. And if it's plugged, fantastic. And if it isn't, all that information is there for people to then make decisions on, right? And I think that's an important lesson for a lot of people who are doing research about this. And I imagine a lot of people who've invested in Safuu go and potentially lost money. Probably need to look at the way they do that as well, right? Because it's not sustainable to just throw your money in unless you literally are a millionaire and you can spare 15 grand and just throw it up the wall for a bit of a laugh.
Right. And don't be afraid to...
I just want to add to that. I think it's also worth to say that I believe all of us feel for the people that have just been stuck in this limbo of Safuu and then sacrifice to Vulcan, maybe sacrifice to Safuu Go, maybe sacrifice to Yomp. Like, I feel for the people that might have just kind of made a bad decision, uninformed decision. Unfortunately, were uneducated and are just now stuck. And of course, try to see the most positive thing. I feel like that's sometimes something that we forget. We look at messages where people are like very hopeful, sipping on the hopium on the Kool-Aid, and forget that it's a person that may literally don't know what to do. In that instance, I just wanted to add that on, and I believe all of us agree here.
Yeah, I think also not being afraid to look at patterns. I mean, one of the things we spoke about right at the very top of this conversation, and David, you and I spoke about this privately, is he's probably going to come back and be the hero. I gave over $150,000 that wasn't my money to begin with, and I'm back here to save the day. It's a continued pattern of Paul said, throwing the dunk out the pram.
Narcissism.
Yeah, narcissism and the absolute need to live in a space where you are unsettled because it makes him feel better about himself.
Yes. Yeah, I wanted that was something I wanted to add on also earlier. Can't remember what it was. I think it was Kevin that was talking about, like, why would he blow up everything, just get rid of it? For a narcissist, positive or negative attention, it does not matter. You're giving them attention. Like, I know some narcissists, it doesn't matter whether you're calling them the best person in the world or the worst person in the world. If you're giving them attention, they're happy with it. That's it. It really doesn't matter. Of course, if you're in their favor, like their cultists, then generally they are happier, but any attention is positive attention for a narcissist in the end. It's honestly a mental disease, so just leave it at that. Yeah.
It is.
I wanted to say
And I
something
mean,
about
does anybody have any other points to raise? It's been a great discussion, but we have almost been going 2 hours. I don't imagine Bryan Legend is going to take me up on the offer coming in to speak to
damn.
I have one question.
Welcome, go for it.
When airline?
When airline? When airplane?
Oh yes, when airplane. Probably
That's the only thing I want to add.
I guess my final thoughts is this. And so ends the ballad of the legend of Bryan Saylor, a man who will be remembered throughout the ages as the scumbag of DeFi. The end.
I mean, at the end of the day, he's a legend. No?
Yeah.
Quite literally, yeah.
I think that was the whole intention from the get-go. Become a legend in DeFi.
I think that was his intention, and unfortunately, it backfired. But listen, if he has, well, he has handed over the 150k. He's going to give them the Twitter account for Safuu Go. If he's done that at the very least, that is a step towards allowing people to move on without him. Right? It's not doing the right thing. It's doing what should have been done in the first place. So I give him no credit for that at all. I will give him credit when he steps away from the space and doesn't interfere anymore. Play with
If a
people.
takeover ever is happening and people
Same.
are taking it, I don't know what else to say or what else to do. I'm gonna be just sad and disappointed.
I will give him the credit of doing the things he should have done originally. And yeah, like you were saying, like when he is fully stepped away and when he is fully removed from Vulcan and they confirm that he has no access to anything at all, then yeah, then you know, good on him for doing what he should have done without nuking and scattering people. But
I mean, I don't even trust the Vulcan team to do that. But hey, I suppose we give them the benefit of the doubt because up to this point, they haven't shown that they can really deliver on anything. But I'll leave that as my opinion. That's an opinion. We just keep it as that. Yeah. Oh, I think Paul, what Dutton was saying that he's going to start a new series. He should definitely do that. And on that, like, talking to Matt Hatter and David on their Twitter. I think it was David's Twitter replied there, and we just had a conversation. It's like, for a way of doing things where like people don't know how to research. Yes, a lot of the time they don't, and like a lot of YouTubers, they say they did research. I don't necessarily believe all of them. You know, like a certain seller. Anyway, like they do these research, they go through these white papers, and they throw their money at things, and everyone just hops into it. Like at the end of the day, it's like now you say an NFT, but you're showing people that you put in money into something. It's a psychological play to get people to on board with you. They just put in it there. But like if these people, if the part of YouTubers also have to take accountability. Like, if you want to take accountability, then share that research, put it in a forum where other people can also see those research, add on to it before you just show yourself adding any money into something or saying, I'm going into this. Just put it there, let people make the decisions from that point. When you display that you are doing something, you are manipulating people into joining you into that thing. That's how it works. It's psychology. Like psychology. That's why I talk this way. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's I appreciate it, and I think you're spot on, and I think actually that's a good place to wind the conversation down on. I hope the conversation has been useful to some. I hope we've provided at least a little bit of value, even if it was just an opportunity for people to vent or hear other people venting. Doing more of these in the future. Well, I hope we don't have to do any more.
Please.
If
Not be legend
there
again,
might be a
please.
part two. There might be a part two of this. You never know.
there might be a part two, and you know,
oh yeah,
We can.
I
we can
extended
just
the
go.
invitation to Mr. Legend, so if he ever does get brave enough to come in here and have a conversation, and
I'm not gonna be there for the next one.
we'll let you know.
I won't either, but I will tune in to hear it. But that answers my question. Is like, are you going to extend the invite to him beyond this? I hope so, because I would honestly love to hear his brain get picked by you guys live in front of like 50 people, where he doesn't get a chance to think about it. He just either answers or doesn't.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope he does. Like I said, he's blocked me in the. I can't DM him. We're not friends. He blocked me after the last
Well
time.
then, everybody listening, you should definitely go tweet at Bryan on Twitter and message him on Discord, respectfully, to come on Pillars and talk to Mad Hatter and David and answer some very honest questions that deserve to be asked and answered. There you go.
Guys, thank you so much for coming up on stage, and thank you for everybody that listened. It's been a fun conversation for us to have. It's been very enjoyable, and like I said, I hope we gave you guys some value, and I look forward to doing it again with you guys all.
Likewise, thank you very much for having us.
Thank you, man.
Shameless plug. We have another conversation tomorrow, like a forum kind of like this. Same time tomorrow. If you want to join in, everyone is free to come in. But yeah, thank you, and I hope everyone enjoyed.